this year. Following the presentation by the legislators, we open the floor to questions and comments directed to our speaking legislators. Those asking questions or making comments are asked to stand up front over this direction, wait in line until you're called, and we ask that people only have one bite at the apple until everyone who wants to speak has had the opportunity to speak at least the first time. We're always pleased to have other legislators in attendance, this morning, I believe that Woodman Page and Brian Smith are here, but with this wonderful lighting, I'm kind of guessing at who I saw. Again, the focus needs to be on the issues being faced by the legislature in Vermont this year. Before we actually begin with the program, I'd like to call upon Dennis Percy of Fred's Energy to share a few words with us. And I'm sure that everyone joins with me in congratulating Fred's for their 50th anniversary in business. Dennis?
Thank you all for coming and allowing me to say a few words here.
You buy breakfast as you talk anytime you want.
Yeah, I've never been much into politics, but there's some policies and bills that are coming out that are kind of hitting close to home. And I was born and brought up here in the Northeast Kingdom. And being in the fuel business, I see people that go through struggles, they go through health issues, financial issues, and this bill, S5, which I don't know if everybody here is up to date on what that is, but the financial impact that I see from S5 is huge. Now, what it involves is electrifying everything and getting rid of the carbon footprint. I've been at Fred's for 37 years, and I take care of people as far as getting them heat. We install heat pumps. We've been installing heat pumps for the last 10 to 15 years. Technology is moving so fast. The stuff that we put in 10 years ago is so far behind technology today, but we're still not there. The extreme cold temperatures of 10 below, 20 below, with the wind chill factor, these heat pumps won't take care of your homes. We've seen it. I drive down Main Street in Derby. I drive down Main Street in Derby Line. I drive down through Newport here. A lot of these homes are 40, 50, 60 years old, even older than that. There's no way possible that you're going to heat these homes and be able to afford it with electricity. Now, I can tell you that we service what we sell. We're out there taking care of people. Now, somebody calls me in the middle of the night and they have no heat, we're out there 24/7, 365 days a year. And we can get them heat in a very short time. If you call me and you have a heat pump and you have no heat, I'm not going to send a man outdoors to work on that outside condenser at 10 below zero. I can tell you that now. I won't have any help. Speaking of help, since COVID hit, I don't know what's happened. The workforce in every field there is out there is a real problem. We don't have enough people to do what this bill is looking to do. Whether it's linemen to upgrade the grid, which the power company will tell you, it will not handle what the load is going to be. As far as electricians to install the stuff, as far as plumbers, Now, I think if you went out there and did the research on it, it takes a special license to handle refrigerant. We don't have nowhere near enough people to do what they want to do. So,
I could, this was just to say hello.
yeah. Well, I thought we had a couple hours. Okay, I'll cut it short. It's just one of those things where I have 96 people I employ. I think of them, their families, and their children, and their grandchildren coming up. And I see that the financial impact is huge, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis, and you spoke long enough so I had the opportunity to recognize that I had not acknowledged Senator Ingalls, who is also here today. This morning, I'm pleased to welcome Senator Robert Starr and Representative Larry Laber and Representative Michael Marcotte. As I introduce the legislators, I ask that the legislature make note of the committee or committees upon which they are serving this year, because I found that the legislative directory is not fully accurate. So with that, call upon Senator Starr.
Well, thank you very much, Bill, and I want to thank Fred's for sponsoring the breakfast and Dan for getting us all together here. It's pretty nice to have an organization that hosts this breakfast, and so we can get together usually once a month or sooner if we can. I serve as chair of the Senate Agricultural Committee, as well as sit on the Senate Appropriations Committee. And both of those committees are I think, very important to our Northeast Kingdom and the state of Vermont. And both committees are very busy. I'll report on ag some and then switch to approps and then talk about other issues that we have before us if I have enough time. Bill keeps us on a pretty short string, and I usually ramble on a little bit, so Bill, just holler when it's my time to leave. But in ag, a couple of the issues, the organic dairy farmers have had a real rough year in 22 and were way behind on what they got paid for the milk compared to what it cost them to produce it. And we've had quite a few of them go out of business, and so we put together a plan to use some of the federal reserve money that has been given to Vermont to offset their losses. And it's going to run up in the $6 to $7 million range, which is a lot of money, but it's not in the grand scheme of things of the billions of dollars that the feds have put forth to Vermont. So we're kind of lucky we have that money, and it's basically to keep our economy going and to help people that fell behind during the years that we were stuck in the pandemic. Another issue that we've worked on a great deal is our Universal School Meals Program. And you might wonder, well, how come a school meals program got going and started in ag? But the way we designed it, we've been working on that for probably 6 or 8 years on getting our local small ag producers to be able to sell meals to their products to the school meals program. So we got going on that, and 35 years ago when I was on the school board in Troy, we had some problems with the school lunch program, and we just offered the school lunch program and ran it through the school budget. And really, we never had one complaint way back then. And I said to the committee, why don't we do a universal school meals program? We'll put some extra money in there to help the school lunch program buy from local producers so our children grow up eating fresh and wholesome products grown right here in Vermont, and hopefully when they get older they'll buy that instead of canned stuff and material that's shipped in from the West Coast and Mexico and all over the country. So that is running well, but we've got to reauthorize that this year to be a permanent program. So we're working on that. The vote over in the House was very strong, and so I don't see why we wouldn't pass it in the Senate. But well, Dennis knows how weird things work down there. I mean, you folks can call and write letters and all this, and you get to vote, and there isn't any of you voting in the right direction compared to what we got for correspondence. So it's different. We do have like 30, 40 new people down there, and I'll tell you, money is no object to most of them. It's like it's growing off trees, and golly, in my years, I haven't been able to find one of them trees yet, but I've been looking. Another issue we've worked on is animal welfare, and if you have animals that you see or that aren't well cared for, who do you call? Some people call ag, some people call fish and wildlife, some people call their local health officer. And it's it's been a jumbled mess of who the heck's in charge. So we've got that set up pretty well, and everybody agrees that we have 14, well, we have way more than 14, but we have game wardens in every county. So if you call ag, if you call your local health officer or fish and wildlife, they will all put that call to the fish and wildlife people, the game wardens within that certain county, and they will go out immediately. And then if they find that ag should be involved, need a state vet, they'll call ag and it'll be taken care of. But there is an order of command now set up, or will be set up hopefully when we leave, to deal with that. Another issue that we bumped into this year is fishing game has always paid for deer crop damage. And run some years $5,000, some years no money at all. But this past growing season, they had one bill come in from one small vegetable grower. Well, not small, but about a 20-acre vegetable grower. $200,000 in damages. And of course, they haven't got extra $200,000 to pay this, and they checked it all out, and all legitimate. The deer did do that much damage. They ate the whole damn crop. And so anyways, we've had private crop insurance people in. We've had USDA in to talk with them about crop damages, and so we're working on trying to find a solution to that problem. But anyways, one more minute, Bill. Appropriations is always crazy busy. We get all the money bills, but before we, I guess I may not even get to it, but I just wanted to comment on S5 a little bit. As most of you know, I've been in Montpelier for many years representing the Northeast Kingdom, and we've had thorny issues many times. But in many cases, you get phone calls, you get emails. Not used to. You used to get letters and phone calls. Now you get emails and along with it. And I don't think I ever received more negative emails and phone calls in all the years I've served on any issue as S5. And, I take all that into account because I'm only representing you folks down there. It's not Bobby Starr that I'm really down there lobbying for. And, but, if you look at the issue, and that's what you have to do, is drill down on the issue that's before you and say, is it going to work? Could it work? Or maybe it doesn't work. And S5 with those heat pumps, and I lived in a house down there with 3 of those things. And I'll tell you, the furnace came on every morning. It was below 20 degrees. The oil or gas, I guess it was gas, would come on, and that's where you'd get your heat from. And S5 does not give us all the alternatives that we all should have available to us to shut down or put a big tax on oil and gas that's really the way we've heated or used wood. And I could figure out no way that would work. And what we did, that did have to run through appropriations. And in appropriations, we put a really heavy study in there to analyze all the different things that we have coming up in regards to S5 before it could be put into place, and it's got to come back to the legislature. And so we're going to have to vote on that again. And I think if the House should happen to take that out, we'll have a lot more than 10 votes to override that thing if the governor should happen to veto it. So, I haven't given up yet on the thing, and hopefully the House will, because they're in worse shape than we are on the Senate side, as far as I'm concerned, with people that don't understand things. So hopefully we'll have another bite at that apple next year. Well, sorry to take more time than I should, Bill, but had to get that out.
Thank you, Bobby. And now to defend the House, I'd like to call upon Representative Labor.
This doesn't work, right?
No, that's a recording only.
Recording only. I believe someone came to my table earlier and said last time they couldn't hear me. So I'll try to speak a little louder this morning until the voice goes south. Bobby alluded to a problem in the House with the Clean Heat Energy Act. I would say it's almost a civil war in the House. Everyone wants to be conservative. We want to be green. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, it's how you lay it down And I know this is S5. It hasn't got to the House yet, but we're gearing up for this war. When you do your research, you find out there's not enough electricity in the grid to support it, that the infrastructure is not there. Hundreds of millions of dollars are going to have to be in upgrade poles, transformers, et cetera, and then purchase power because we can't build a plant to generate that power fast enough. So there's a problem when you put in EV cars. It's not just heat pumps. And heat pumps, by the way, are great air conditioners. Fred will tell you that. Well, that's nice, but that means more power in the summertime is being drained from the grid. So they're a nice product. They will come, but they're before their time. Build into it, and you should do fine. So I'm not going to take any of Russ's talk, because I know he's all geared up for this. H-21 is a unique bill. That came to us from realtors and from property owners who are renters. It seems in the past, tenants get the notification of electric utility missed payment. Okay, that's nice, but the landlord didn't get it. The tenant bolts after missing a couple of months, and the landlord has no clue that there's electrical bills in arrears. He owns the property, or she owns the property, and someone's going to have to be on the hook. So H-21 is a simple bill that has notification of disconnect going to both parties at the same day, same time. So now the landlord can go and address the tenant prior to getting on the hook. So that was a good one. Another bill is pinned on the wall is my bill on election ballots. It's H-23 if you want to look at it. It's a simple bill. In the course of my campaigning, I found that a lot of mailed, direct mail, general ballots are all over the place. I had one constituent. They got 6 ballots because he lived 4 different addresses in Vermont and 2 in Massachusetts. And that's really not a good thing. Well, you got 3 stovepipes. They're all vertical. You have your mail delivery person, you have your Secretary of State, and the bottom of the food chain is your town clerk. But there's no law saying when you change addresses that you have to notify the town clerk. So how does it get to the state? Doesn't. So the state's address list is not that accurate, believe me. I had over 700 that returned on direct mail. That's pinned to the wall, by the way. It'll probably stay pinned on the wall. We got a new Secretary of State that very efficient, but I don't think she's got to that bill yet. And by the way, if you're wondering how much we spent, well, Santa Claus in Washington, between all of the acronyms, if you take all of the monies that came from the different parts of the federal Christmas gift basket, we spent $8.53 million last week. We did pass the big budget bill. That's $300 million more than the governor's request. And the reason he wanted money held back was so we could pay for the matching for future monies, because usually transportation's 80-20, 80 on the feds, 20% of the town, county, whatever. Those funds are kind of gone. Paid family leave bill. This is a unique one. It's very expensive, about $117 million. And it won't take effect until July 1st, 2026. Now, why are you talking about it now? Well, we're talking about it now because the front-end load is 18 months just to build the trust fund so that you can distribute to those who want paid family leave. Well, the definitions of paid family leave in this bill are 12 weeks, 90% of your pay for not going to work. Now, for a new mom, bonding with a child, that's a great thing. I don't have a problem with that at all. But the husband, father, after she's done her 12 weeks, can take his 12 weeks. So you got 24 weeks out of employment if they were both employed prior to the big event. Who's going to afford that? The taxpayer is going to afford it. The tax rate on this is 0.55% of your gross pay, starting now for the build-out. That's in competition with the governor's. The governor has one. It's administered through, and that involves 65 new employees, by the way. Just administer this thing. That's part of the 117 million. So, yeah, you can say at least the Republicans in the House are not in favor of that bill. The whole Northeast Kingdom is voting against that bill because the governor has a bill. His is 60% of your salary. We're not on salary. We don't get it, by the way. But his is administered through what we call a TPA, third-party administrator, and that will be through an insurance program. That's not coming out of your paycheck. They are capitalized. There's no risk to the state. This is a large insurance term. That can start this July without a buildup. There's your advantage there. How many minutes have I got? State auditor's bill. This has been controversial. The House approved the state auditor to look at expense financing, bills paid, whatever, to contractors who have signed a contract to do a service for the state. Prior to this, people were saying no. Well, this bill passed. Hopefully the Senate doesn't monkey with it. National Guard, people who protect us, people who are trained. We passed a bill to give them a $2,000 exemption if they made $50,000 a year or less on their Vermont taxes. That's about it. I'll wait for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I'd like to call upon Representative Mike Marcotte.
Thank you, Bill. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out this morning. So many issues and so little time. So the budget came out, was voted on last Thursday and Friday in the House. It's on its way over to the Senate now. I think Larry talked about the cost, $8.6 billion. Out of that, this represents H-484, which is actually in the budget. It's not a separate bill, but this came out of my committee. I am chair of House Commerce and Economic Development. This is our part of it. It's $48.5 million spent on workforce and economic development in the state. Last year, we looked at a segment of the workforce, nursing and the medical field. We put a lot of dollars into that in forgivable loans, also in the trades. We're continuing to fund those forgivable loans through most of them through VSAC. But this year we've also targeted our teacher population. We're having an increased decline in teachers throughout the state. And we need to do something to try to encourage students that are in college wanting to be teachers to stay here. So we've also created forgivable loan funds in that section as well. We've also put $8 million into brownfields remediation, again, trying to bring those properties that have issues with pollution in the ground, to try to get them remediated, get them back on the tax rolls, and actually providing economic development throughout the state. So I guess I have a question. This is also not quite related to the budget, but more of the transportation bill. So the transportation bill looked fine to me. I didn't have any problems with it. There was a problem with an amendment that was attached to it. And how many people here think that we pay enough or pay too much when it comes to the fees in motor vehicles? So your driver's license, your registrations. Do you think we're paying enough? Do you think we're paying too much? Show of hands. So do people realize that in the last 7 years we have not had a fee increase in those fees pertaining to your licenses, your registrations, anything that has to do with DMV? Not an increase. The Department of Motor Vehicles has not asked for another increase this year. Attached, an amendment that was passed and attached to the transportation bill is a 20% increase in those motor vehicle fees. We don't have the power, as the Republicans don't have the power to stop that. The governor doesn't have the power to, he can veto it, but we don't necessarily have the power to sustain the veto. Very good possibility that we'll all be paying more for our licenses and our registrations for our vehicles come July 1. And no need for it. I think if you saw the news over the weekend, it talked about the revenues of the state that came in for February. $12 million over projections. And yet, we need to tax each and every one of you for your licenses, for your registrations. Because in the appropriations bill, they decided that $150 million that the governor wanted to set aside for future years to help pay for our share of federal dollars that come into the state in transportation to draw those down. Instead, we're going to tax you now during a time when inflation is driving the cost of everything up, coming directly out of your pocketbooks. More for food, more for fuel, more for property taxes. And still, Montpelier's asking you for more of your money. Something wrong is going on in Montpelier. It's a huge disconnect between our constituents and the realities that we all face. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're at the point in the program where we open the floor to questions and comments from you, the citizens of Orleans County. Ask that you line up, well, fairly close to the exit sign. And when you are called, please identify yourself by telling us your name and what town you are from. If your question or comment is directed to only one of the legislators, please let us know. Otherwise, I'll assume that the question or comment is directed to all of the featured legislators. And if we can begin.
Good morning. My name is Beth Barnes. I'm the mayor of Newport, and this is my first time speaking at a legislative breakfast as mayor. It's a very proud moment, and I sure hope I'm going to get this right. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about this, but here goes. I noticed in the Vermont Biz, written on April 1st, I hope this was not an April Fool's joke, but it says, Welsh Sanders Gillibrand call for robust federal funding for Lake Champlain protection programs. It goes on to say in the letter, we ask you to continue to provide robust federal funding for programs supporting the Lake Champlain Basin. The letter read, Lake Champlain provides significant environmental, recreational, historic, and educational value to our region. I would like to say that next time I read that headline, I'd like it to say robust federal funding for Lake Memphremagog. Our beautiful lake is our #1 economic driver. It provides drinking water to our neighbors in Canada, and I feel as a human being that it's important for me and hopefully all of us to protect it now and into the future. And if you take one thing away from what I say today, please take this away. Cherish our lake. Thank you.
Senator Starr.
Yeah, thank you, Beth, for the question and what you would like. The Lake Champlain Basin, part of our area is within that basin area, and I believe that some of that, was that out of Montpelier or is it out of Washington, Beth? The eastern or western side of our state has a real problem with pollution and our waters with phosphorus and things of that nature. The eastern side of the state, it's mostly with nitrates. And so there is a vast difference between the western side of our state and the eastern. But I don't know why, if it had the Champlain district in there, that Newport, of course your water goes to Canada, but the Missisquoi River and the other side of the hill, you might say, all runs into Champlain. I can certainly look into that and see what the deal is on that cleanup.
Representative Labor.
Thank you, Bill. The only thing that has come before the House so far, as far as environmental issues, I represent, I'm in the membership of Housing and General Affairs. General is a catch-all phrase. They don't know where to put it, they throw it at us. So H31 is an aquatic nuisance and pesticide application bill, but it's narrowed down its focus to one lake, the largest lake in the state of Vermont, wholly in the state of Vermont, which rules out Memphremagog and Lake Champlain. It's Lake Bomoseen. They have milfoil that is strangling the lake. So that's one side of it. You got the other side, who doesn't want any pesticide or herbicide application to the water. I believe that is headed back to, it's gone through the first and second reading, it's headed to third reading, and I have no clue where that's going to go, because the voting has been voice vote on the floor. The only way you're truly going to know where this bill goes is if it goes to roll call vote. That hasn't been scheduled. No dollars have been assigned to it, so that means it hasn't gone through Ways and Means or appropriates yet. It's got a mile or two to go. Thank you.
Representative Marcotte.
Well, first, congratulations, Madam Mayor, on your victory in March. Certainly look forward to working with you in the city, although I don't represent it anymore, but I'm always happy to help. What I would say is that we all should be contacting our federal delegation and reminding them that we have a lake here also that's in international waters, as is Lake Champlain. I know that we have discussed within the state, we have dollars that are spent to help Lake Champlain, and that's gets the major talking points. But within those dollars are also shared here for Lake Memphremagog as well. I think federally we need to increase the pressure and maybe educate our federal delegation about Memphremagog as well.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. My name is Teresa Gerade. I live here in Newport, and I am a member of the Dump Environmental Group as well. And interesting, we're talking about the lake. It's great that we're talking about the lake. Our group learned by accident last week that Montpelier and News VT, Casella, that owns the landfill, a multi-billion-dollar for-profit company, cooperated to get the Agency of Natural Resources to grant $1 million in ARPA funds to build a pilot experimental leachate treatment system on site in Coventry. Since then, we've learned that some of our own legislators in the NEK had no knowledge of this decision. Our questions for you are, is this the way our Vermont government runs, that $1 million in federal funds can be allocated with no public or legislative notice or comment or approval to a project that threatens the Northeast Kingdom, communities, and the environment and the lake? The legislature gave blanket approval in the 2022 budget, and the Agency of Natural Resources made this decision with no further input from the legislature. The second question is, what can be done about it? Will you stand as our legislators to protect this lake and the communities that depend upon it? This doesn't have to be a done deal. Remember EB5. The Northeast Kingdom has been suffering, and we don't need to suffer again from legislation like this. Thank you.
Senator Starr.
Yes, Susie, that was brought up to me this morning. And, being on appropriations, you'd think that we would know where money was going. But we allocate money to, the Department of Agriculture and all the different agencies in one budget, and you sort of trust what they're going to do with that money. And this is all new news to me. And I sit on the committee where all this stuff, like last year when they came in with their budget, they didn't say, well, we're going to use some of this for leachate pre-treatments or anything like that. And I don't know if we got on to the governor and he got on to the secretary of the agency if we could get a recall on that money. But it certainly is something that every Wednesday the governor has a coffee hour and stuff, and we can get in to see him and chat with him. But we as a delegation, I think, maybe should go in, not during that time, but have a special meeting with the governor in regards to this issue. And the sooner the better. So possibly we can get an appointment this week and go in and talk with him, because he's really the boss, and he's good to work with. So I would suggest to our other members that are here that possibly we could get that meeting set up right off this week and go in and say, hey, Gov, what's going on? So that's where I think we ought to be.
Representative Labor.
I don't have much more to add to that, Bill.
Representative Marcotte.
Thanks for the question. This is the first I've heard about ARPA funding. I suspect that it's one of the grant fundings that was approved either for water quality or community and business revitalization dollars that came out, but I wasn't aware that any dollars were given to Casella for the leachate. I would assume it's probably from water quality, but I don't know. But I think we should find out where it came from, why they were granted a grant, why they applied, and why they were found to be qualified to receive $1 million for that leachate. So I think, from what Bobby said, that we should have a little chat and find out what's going on.
Next.
Morning. My name's Russell Hinton, and I live here in the city of Newport. I guess my question today is, I volunteer as a guardian ad litem in the courts. And my question is, what is the state of Vermont doing or going to do with the children that are being sent out of this state for treatment? We have no facilities or very limited facilities in the state of Vermont for our children to get the help that they need after, I can't remember the name of the place that got shut down a year or two ago. Huh? Woodside. And so in the very, not too long ago, I had a child that was sent to Florida. I have one in Massachusetts. I have another one that's leaving for Tennessee. And we have no facilities or we're taking these kids into custody. And what are we doing about it? The state of Vermont's not doing nothing for these children, and it just burns me. I'm sorry, I don't know what to do about it. I don't even know if there's an answer for it. But we need to do something for our children that are in custody, because anyhow, I'm sorry about that. Thank you.
Senator Starr.
Yes, Woodside was down in Essex, Winooski area, and we ended up, Woodside was not really producing any help for our children. Actually, they were down to a handful, maybe 4 or 3 people in there, and they had 15 or 20 employees, and it was a complete waste of money for what we, the people, were getting out of it. And I think it was that low number that caused the place to be actually closed, and the facility was not very appetizing to try to help anybody. And so the state went down to Newberry, and there's a nice home down there that's all fenced in. and would have been a great place for our young people to go and try to rehabilitate them to become decent citizens. But the town has been fighting that from day one, and they're looking to find a new place, but the state is still pushing to try to get that place taken care of and built. Not built, it's already built. It just needs opening up in Newberry to handle these young people. So that's where we are, as far as I know, in Montpelier with that situation.
Representative Labor.
I do have a little bit more information on Newbury and why they are fighting it. They're on this building is on a Class 4 road, about a mile outside of town. They have a volunteer fire department. They have a small hospital, which is a little over half an hour away, and they have no police law enforcement department. And that's one of the pushbacks for this bill to happen. So seeing that the state was going to ramrod it through, quote unquote, I talked with the chair of the select board of Newbury. They're not a happy camper down there. So they have sued the state. It's in the courts to put a halt to this expansion into Newbury. And that's where it lies right now.
Representative Marcotte.
So first, Russell, thank you for your service as a guardian ad litem. We need more and more people to fill those roles as well, and especially as a volunteer. We appreciate it. Thank you. Woodside was a facility for youthful violent offenders. The federal government had stopped providing funding for that facility when they determined that it was not up to code, up to specs, and I think the state needed to invest probably more money than it was worth to invest in. So they looked for another facility, shut it down. So I think you've heard all about Newberry and the reasons why there's an issue there. But there is still that real need for us to figure out what we can do to keep those youthful offenders within the state so they're close to their families, so that we can work to rehabilitate them. So it should be a top priority for us in Montpelier, and thank you for bringing it up.
Next.
Thank you, Bill. This is an FYI on S5. I'm on the Energy and Environment Committee, and S5 is going to have a lot of testimony this week, and we're starting at, I got to think here, 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. We have 14 or 15 witnesses that have been invited by the chair, and most of the witnesses are in favor of S5, so if that camera right there is going to get this word out that people around here can watch testimony, it's very important that they do. I think we've got probably a split committee on S5 right now after the testimony. Dennis, thank you for being there the other day. We had a lot of good testimony. And S5, to keep myself politically correct, I'll use the word crap. But it's a bill that's it's a real genuine piece of crap, and it's going to hurt every single Vermonter, people that own mobile homes especially. heat pumps don't work on them, but I'll make this short. I didn't come up here to give a big speech, but just anyway, you can get on the Vermont State website. Wednesday morning will be at 9 o'clock, Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, and Friday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But tomorrow afternoon is 1 o'clock, and there are, I think, 14 witnesses that are going to be testifying on S5. And another note on H48, I sent an email to my committee chair yesterday in Environment and Energy, and H48 is going to be mentioned every single morning this week until it comes off the wall and on the table. So hopefully she's in charge, my chair's in charge, but hopefully that will happen. And Lake Memphremagog, Ms. Mayor, Lake Memphremagog does get mentioned on every single clean water bill that comes up, especially when Lake Champlain gets mentioned. So that's about all I had, but I just thought it very important that everybody knew that, so thank you.
Senator Starr?
No. Really, no comment on it. It was an advertisement, I think, of what the House was doing, and info for all of you folks on getting some testimony together, and especially for Dennis, if he hasn't already been down. Thank you.
Representative Lair? Nothing? Representative Marcotte?
Just one quick thing. Just so everyone knows, all of our committee meetings are televised on YouTube. So they're televised live, but they're also there. If you can't watch them live, you can watch them anytime. So please use that feature that we have now so that you can see what's going on in each one of the committees and get a better understanding of what's being talked about and what we're dealing with as well.
Mr. Coe?
Thank you, Bill, and thank your legislators for being here and listening to the public.
Identify yourself.
I'm sorry. My name is Henry Coe, C-O-E. I lived in Glover and in Orleans County for 24 years. I live 2 towns away in Caledonia County today, but I have 10 immediate family members who live in the Memphremagog watershed, and I'm really speaking for my kids and my grandkids. We have been concerned for 5 years about the expansion of this landfill, and it's what we feel is a threat to this lake we're looking out on. The Canadians have joined with us in our little volunteer group. They're very concerned. They drink the water. I think we come here today just to say we think everyone should think of a time final when that landfill closes. We contribute in our 3 counties in the Northeast Kingdom 7% to what goes in that landfill. 93% comes from the rest of Vermont, and 20% within the 93% comes from out of state, mostly from Massachusetts. And it's the most toxic waste there is. It's sludge and sludge cake, which is concentrated with PFAS. These trucks are bringing in toxics every day. And 5 years ago, we asked the question, where are the PFAS coming from in that 51-acre expansion? And I got to thinking, there was no answer. They didn't even mention the word PFAS or these toxic contaminants for the water. I got to thinking, it's like a farm of 60 cows, and he wants to add on to make it 100 cows. I was once a dairy farmer. But without any plan for where the extra manure is going to go for the 40 cows. That was the plan that Casella submitted to us. And they haven't answered it yet. Now they are. They're saying, the state has found PFAS leaking toward the Black River in exceedance of the standards for public health. And, Casella says, well, it hasn't reached the compliance point. It's still on our property. They have 1,000 acres. However, the compliance point downslope from the landfill is the Black River. Where does the Black River drain to? I have a question at the end of this, and I'll make it short. I really, when we learned last week, and even the legislators don't know, that public monies, $1 million has gone to this $4 billion corporation. It's a pebble, it's a thorn in my shoe. And respectfully, we've done a lot of research on how you clean out PFAS from landfill leachate. It's never been done successfully in the United States at landfill scale. This technology is in its infancy. And yet the state quietly and without transparency has approved $1 million to a private corporation to put in this project. It's ambiguous. They haven't even described the technology that will do this and if it works. There are no rules. It's like a ball game being played on the private owner's field without any rules. My question is this legal to the legislators?
Senator Starr.
Henry, I don't know if it's legal or not legal, but I do know that we must have appropriated X dollars to the department or ANR for clean water, and they determined that was the best use of part of that money. As I said earlier, we need to sit down with the governor and talk with him in regards to this issue. I don't know where you folks got your information from. I hope it wasn't out of a newspaper or something, because they do occasionally make mistakes. But I think it's our job representing you folks to drill down on this issue and get some clear answers as to why they're giving all this money to a private concern to build this. So that's where I think we ought to go.
Representative Labor.
I concur with what Bobby just spoke.
Okay. Representative Marcotte.
With any of these grant fundings that we had appropriated, there are requirements that the agency, and whether it was the Agency of Commerce or the Agency of Natural Resources, have to follow. There's also federal guidelines that they have to follow as well, which tend to be pretty stringent. And so, I don't know, but as far as I would say is that they would have had to follow those guidelines when they granted those funds to Casella for that PFAS system, for the leachate. If they don't follow, especially the federal guidelines, and they will be auditing, and it comes back, then the state is on the hook to pay that money back. And they'll have to claw it back from from whoever they granted the money for. So legal, I would probably say yes, I think it is, but without seeing and talking with the agency, I don't know for sure.
Effie.
Good morning. My name is Effie Brown. I live in the town of Derby. I have two questions. Last month here, we heard Ed Barber talking about the increase in the fees for his rubbish pickup. And a couple of you, I think Russ and Larry, both were going to follow up on this monopoly that seems to be building with Casella. And that's one question. The other question is about this leachate and the $1 million that we've discovered that will be passed through Montpelier to Casella. Why? And this has kind of been a little bit secretive. We've asked questions a number of times. Where is this pretreatment facility going to be? And it's not been answered, but why does it have to be here at the head of Lake Memphremagog in the watershed?
Senator Starr.
Thanks, Effie. I didn't really hear your first question that clear.
It was about the increase in fees for the landfill, and Ed Barber had brought up that his fee went from $8 to $20 a month, and talked about the fact that Casella has been building this monopoly.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, that charge, that increase in charge on your waste going to the dump, that's a private entity, Casella, and they may have raised their tonnage fees so that the person or company that picks up the rubbish when they take it in have to pay more. But that's sort of a private matter. I don't believe it is regulated through the state. So I think that's a private issue between who you have picking up your rubbish and the dump that we don't have anything to do with on that. The other issue, I think, that as we've said, we've got to check that out to see, which agency is given the money and follow through on that to make sure it was done properly. So, I mean, it's more on checkup, and I don't know if the other members that were here at the last meeting found out more about that. So, thank you, Bill.
Representative Labor.
Thank you, Bill. Casella, in their adventures to become a monopoly, when they purchase a business, a refuse pickup business, whether it's recycling, excuse me, not talking loud enough. It's a free market enterprise. The state cannot control free market enterprise unless they break a law. And it's as complicated and as simple as that. Unfortunately, I suspect that the hauler that serviced Ed Barber's area was one that was purchased. And if that's the case, then the constituents on those roads, all of their fees, not just Ed's, everybody's fees, are going to be increased as they were. And that is free market enterprise.
Representative Marcotte, anything? We have about a minute and a half.
I'll keep it short.
Yes.
I think there's 4 haulers in the area. I think the landfill itself has increased their fees, and I think the haulers followed suit, and they needed to. But I think we all need to understand what's going on in business, and that business or any other business is not immune to what's going on in the economy right now. With inflation, the rise of inflation, the cost of fuel has driven costs way up, and especially in that business, that's extremely vehicle intensive. So I think, unfortunately, a lot of that is a victim of where we are now with inflation.
That concludes this morning's legislative breakfast. I'd like to thank Fred's Energy and Dennis Percy individually, the East Side Restaurant, Dan Pellerin, the Vermont North Country Chamber of Commerce, and the members of the press for covering this session. Our next breakfast will be held here on April 24th, at which our scheduled presenters will be Senator Russell Ingalls and Representative Brian Smith and Woodman Page. Thank you all for attending.